There we go. We're just listening in to Tom Hayes and Carlo Palumbo, who were jailed following trials for manipulating interest rates used for loans between banks, but effectively had their conviction squashed following a 10-year fight. Talking about that fight and how they feel today, having been cleared by the Supreme Court. Let's bring in Gurpreet Narwan, who is live for us. Gurpreet, very good morning to you. And listening in to those two men there, a reminder of what a struggle it's been to clear their name.
Yeah, that's right. You've been hearing from Tom Hayes. He was the first trader in the world to be convicted of rigging LIBOR. You may remember it was a huge scandal following the financial crisis. That LIBOR rate is used to set interest rates, was used to set interest rates and derivatives on loans and derivatives throughout the financial system. It's based on numbers submitted daily by banks. And the accusation was that Tom Hayes was manipulating that rate, that he was a sort of ringleader in an international fraud conspiracy. And he was one of 9 successfully prosecuted by the Serious Fraud Office. And his prosecution, as you may remember, became this huge flashpoint for public anger following the financial crisis. It cost banks billions of pounds in fines and settlements. And Mr. Hayes, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison. That's one of the toughest sentences, by the way, for white-collar fraud ever in this country. It was reduced to 11 years on appeal, and then he served 5.5 of that. And then today, the Supreme Court overturned that decision, saying the jury in the original trial at Southern Crown Court had been misdirected. And it could now, as you've been hearing in that press conference, lead to other convictions being quashed. We heard from Carlo Palumbo, who was another banker, an Italian banker, who in 2019 was convicted of rigging the euro version of LIBOR, and his conviction was also quashed today. And speaking outside court, Mr. Hayes described it as a surreal moment. He said he had 10 years to think about what he would say in this moment and how he would feel, but he can't quite believe that it's happening to him. And in that press conference, you heard a lot of serious issues being chewed over. There were serious questions about the legal system. There were questions about how the Serious Fraud Office handles cases. And it was interesting that Mr. Hayes, although he was convicted by a jury, gave a really passionate defence of the jury system, saying that he doesn't believe that he would have had a different outcome if these cases were tried just by judges. He said that the jury system wasn't perfect, but it was the best system that he had. And his representatives, they gave a very passionate but also moving account of the experience that Mr. Hayes has had over the last decade. He said they said that he had lost time with his family, which he would never get back. They said the legal system, the appeals process had been far too slow and called for a public inquiry. And Mr. Hayes, he quoted Nelson Mandela. I don't know if you heard that bit from the press conference. He said that today was a really bittersweet moment. He called the original ruling mad and said he was frustrated that it took such a long time and pointed to fundamental errors in the way that this case was prosecuted. He also talked about politicians and their self-interest and saying that he had been advised not to speak to the media originally, which meant that false narratives propagated about what he had done. But overall, he said that today was a happy day.
OK, Gurpreet Narwan there for us live in central London. Thank you very much indeed on that breaking news this morning. A little bit more breaking news, and that is in the last couple of minutes, the police service in Northern Ireland have confirmed that 2 people have died and 2 others have been seriously injured in a shooting incident in County Fermanagh in Northern Ireland this morning. The incident happens in a village called Maguire's Bridge, and the police say that part of the site where the incident took place is closed, but there is no ongoing risk to the public. In a statement, the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service said it received a 999 call at 8:21 a.m. this morning and dispatched crews to the scene. It said that 1 person was airlifted to a hospital in Belfast, another one to a hospital in Enniskillen, but confirmation from the police service in Northern Ireland in the last couple of minutes that 2 people have died and 2 others are seriously injured after a shooting incident in County Fermanagh in Northern Ireland this morning. And we'll have more on that, of course, from midday here on Sky News. But let's bring you up to date now with the rest of the business news this morning. On this Wednesday, and the US has agreed a trade deal with Japan that will impose 15% tariffs on goods imported into America from the world's fourth largest economy. The 15% levy is lower than the 25% President Donald Trump had threatened in a letter earlier this month, but it is higher than the 10% rate that had been in force while the countries negotiated. Let's speak to Helen Thomas, Chief Executive of Blonde Money, who joins us now. Helen, very good morning to you. A deal at least has been done.
Absolutely. And I would imagine the Japanese Prime Minister is pleased about that because he is rather beleaguered. There was a upper house election at the weekend where his coalition government lost their majority. So he is really in trouble, may even be resigning, according to recent media reports. So, look, I'm sure he'll be delighted to have got this deal done.
Yeah, indeed. And let's look at a bit of the details of the deal, because as we say, we're getting used to these tariffs now, but 15% is still quite high, isn't it, between two actually rather large trading partners and allies, it must be said.
Well, it is. I'm glad you've used that word allies, because this is what it's all wrapped up with, of course. This is not just a pure economic decision. This is about, do you want to be within the umbrella of the US? And, you know, US and Japan have had quite a good relationship over the years. So I think what you're seeing here is, yes, it's lower than was threatened, but it's not at the lowest level, which sort of says, look, we're embracing you, but you could go a bit further. And if you do, well, you know what, if you bow to the US, we will give you a better deal. I mean, I think it's Donald Trump trying to retain some of that advantage over them.
What's also interesting is that aluminium and steel is not included in this deal, defence commitments too. And it is a reminder that we talk about trade deals as if they're like the old school trade deals that sometimes takes years to negotiate and years to implement. These are kind of more trade agreements, are they, or the skeleton of dealing with certain issues?
Yes, they are. They're sort of a memorandum of understanding, if you like, between two parties. And what's significant about that, of course, is it could change. It could get better. There could be better terms if, of course, this is how Donald Trump wants to play this. If you play by his rules, you want to be in his gang, then you'll get even better terms in the future. As you say, we're getting used to tariffs, but they could continue to move around. They could go up, they could go down. It depends if you want to play along. So I think we just have to get used to this as like a sense of a rolling agreement. At the moment, Japan are in favour with the US and have got a relatively good deal by the looks of things.
In saying that, we've still got this August 1st deadline, though we're told it's quite flexible for other deals, because, yes, there's Japan, I think Vietnam, Indonesia, clearly us here in the UK too, but the big other one is clearly the European Union. And we've heard in the last couple of days France essentially telling the EU to take a tougher line with the United States. The EU, of course, the world's largest trading body.
Yeah, and this is key. The EU is really stuck between what does it want to be with the US consumer versus getting cheap products from China. This is, look, this is the heart of global international relations and the economy today. What's interesting, actually, in the markets today is that some EU automaker prices have rallied in an expectation that there may well be a similar deal done with the EU. I wouldn't be so sure. The hardest part, really, for this, of course, you've mentioned France there. Look, you're not just dealing with one country and one leader, even though Ursula von der Leyen is president of the European Commission. You have all those countries that make up the European Union that want to have their say as well. And that is partly why it's going to be difficult to get a deal done.
OK, Helen, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for joining us there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, ministers have given the green light to building the UK's second new nuclear energy plant after the government reached an agreement with investors. The final investment decision on the £38 billion Sizewell C project due to be built in Suffolk has secured investment from private groups. And the government will be the biggest single investor in the project with, as you can see, an initial 44.9% stake, while La Casse will take 20%. Centrica, British Gas parent company, has got 15%, and Amber Infrastructure will take an initial 7.6% stake, which will rise to 10%. Meanwhile, France's state-owned utility, EDF, is taking 12.5%. Well, I've had the chance to speak to the chief executive at Centrica, that's Chris OShea, and began by asking him why they've decided to invest in Sizewell C.
Well, Darren, firstly, thanks very much for having me on. Sizewell C this is a momentous day. This is the first nuclear power station we've announced for over 10 years. It'll only be the second in 30 years being built in the UK. And what it will do is it will provide clean, green, zero-carbon electricity to 6 million homes for at least 60 years. So the people that will be using the electricity from this power station when it gets towards the end of its life, because I think it'll go well beyond 60 years, have not even been born at the moment. So this is a huge drive towards net zero. It takes the volatility out of electricity prices and it ensures that we have electricity when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, and it reduces the environmental damage. So it's a huge thing for the country. It's great for the country. It's very good for the stakeholders, and I take my hat off to the government in terms of the work they've done to make this both investable and good for consumers.
In saying that, as you said, there are lots of different investors in all of this. There's the government, there's you guys, there's EDF and others. Are there too many cooks, if you like? Is this going to make what is a pretty complicated enterprise even more complicated?
I don't think so. I think there's a very good management team in Sizewell C. You've got co-managing directors, you've got Nigel and Julia, they're doing a great job. You've got John Holland-Kay that used to run Heathrow. John's the chairman of Sizewell C. So you've got this independent operating company. And then you've got an agreement between a number of different shareholders, as you say. The government will be the largest shareholder. Then you've got Lacasse, which will be around 20%, Centrica at 15%, EDF at 12.5%, and then Amber will go from 7.5% to 10%. There are very strict and well-documented governance rules there. If you've got more than 10%, you'll have a seat on the board. The board will help to drive the project. But we have a great management team, and that's really what's going to drive the delivery of this project, hopefully ahead of schedule and ahead of budget.
Well, Chris, that's the one thing I was going to bring on to next, is because we haven't got a great history, have we, of infrastructure in this country. Sizewell C 10 years ago was meant to cost £20 billion. Now we're told it's 38. How determined are you, or what can you do to ensure that this project does actually run on time and that cost that, frankly, is almost double, doesn't get any higher?
So planning a project is very, very important. So this is something you say has applied to a lot of infrastructure. Having a good plan, having few changes to the plan and having a workforce that knows what they're doing and has experience is very important. So Hinkley Point C, I think, had 11,000 design modifications after the project started. Sizewell C will have around 500. So it's not a direct lift, but it's by and large taking Hinkley Point C and building it in a different part of the UK. So firstly, you have far fewer modifications. You then have a workforce that have been used to building Hinkley Point C. And if you see the efficiencies, so the first reactor, Hinkley Point C is 2 reactors. The first reactor performance was probably about a third worse in terms of cost and schedule than the second reactor. So you had about a 25% reduction. And we'd look to see that further reduction as you go on to the first reactor in Sizewell C and then the second reactor there. So the more you do it, the better you are. So I'm sure that your first interview is probably not as good as your 10th or your 20th or your 30th interview. Practice is really important. And we want to have these, this is why we don't want to have just one-off every 10 years, every 20 years, every 30 years, we announce a new plant. This should be the first of a series of plants, and we will get better, we'll get more efficient. The UK built the first nuclear power station 70 years ago. This is a chance for us to have a rebirth of nuclear and to become the world leader once again.
Just on that point about clean, green energy, nuclear is clearly part of that mix. We're seeing, obviously, solar and wind as part of that. How do you think, where are we, do you reckon, in terms of moving to net zero?
I think we're making great progress. I think that we've got, you see lots of investment coming in, whether it's more in wind, more in solar. We've got more investment in gas-fired power stations as well. They're required to provide electricity when the wind doesn't blow or the sun doesn't shine. More nuclear is important, more battery storage. So I think we're making tremendous progress in getting towards net zero.
There you go. That was Chris OShea from Centrica, the owners of British Gas. Now, India says that Boeing's fuel controls were not to blame for the plane crash, which killed 241 people last month. The airline says its inspections found no issues with the fuel locking mechanisms on any of the Boeing 787s and 737 aircrafts. Final report, of course, is expected within a year. Well, let's bring in the chief executive of Sun Express Airlines, who has got a fleet of Boeing planes, and that is Max Cronatski. Very good morning to you. Just on this issue, because we know consumers, passengers, very concerned about Boeing over the last decade or so and the safety record. Are you confident in them as an airline, an aircraft manufacturer, I should suggest?
Well, Sun Express is operating a full 737 fleet, so a very different aircraft than the one you just mentioned regarding the India accident. We're very happy with the quality and the technological benefits of this aircraft. We have the 737 MAX 8, we have the MAX 10 on order, and also the 800s. And in terms of fuel efficiency, noise levels, we're very happy with that aircraft. Delay deliveries is something we would like to focus on more, but the aircraft itself and the safety for our passengers, obviously, we're very happy with in terms of the aircraft that we are flying and have in our fleet.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Those delays in terms of the aircraft is something that others like Ryanair complain about too. Let's talk about Sun Express, though. Lots of people in the UK may not have heard of you guys, but you fly now from lots of different places in the UK, primarily to Turkey.
Well, Sun Express is a joint venture, 50% Lufthansa, 50% Turkish Airlines. We have a fleet of 85 aircraft right now. We're offering 237 routes in 35 countries. And yes, indeed, we've had a very significant market entry into the UK and also Ireland. As of summer 2022, we've grown since from 3 to 5 to 7 to 9, now at 13 airports. Offering over 2 million seats per year into this market. And Glasgow, Liverpool, Cork, those are the latest additional airports we've added this year. So quite a significant growth story with growth rates in the first 2 years of 80 and 75%.
And of course, the UK market is incredibly competitive, isn't it? When you think particularly at the lower end of the cost scale, Ryanair, EasyJet, Wizz Air, I could go on. Why the expansion into the UK? Where do you think the growth is going to come from? Are you going to try and take some passengers away from your rivals?
Well, I think it's a market that has historically shown amazing growth rates over the last 35 years. You can see CAGRs of 10 to 12% every year. And Sun Express is not an ultra low cost or low cost carrier. We consider ourselves to be a value carrier because we do offer certain benefits. For example, premium meals, extra legroom space. We have golf packages. We also launched our own Sun Express Golf Club membership program. So we're not in the same spectrum. On top of that, again, Turkey as a market and as a destination is not only world renowned for its beautiful beaches and warm hospitality, but also for a very good value for money ratio. And again, I think in terms of Spain versus Turkey, we're doing quite well. On the cost side, we don't shy away from a competition either. So I think we're well set up on a competitive basis as well as from a demand on a market basis.
OK, Max, appreciate your time this morning from Sun Express. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
OK, that's it from me. Back at 4:30 this afternoon. More of the rest of the news from midday. Goodbye.